Bust the rhymes up in the place, true indeed. Bust the rhymes up in the place. Who can flow with me?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here again, another week, another episode. Episode 7, New Amsterdam, here on the Project Recap Podcast. It is me, the one and only, the Mr. TYB. We're here, got a lot of stuff that we're going to get into today, talking about the Knicks, talking about the Bucks and their recent win streak, the latest on the trade deadline, and just an update on my MVP watch. And of course, before we even get into any of that, we're going to go ahead and get right into this week's quick recap. Starting off, the Joe Biden stimulus checks have dropped, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it. Okay. I got mine fairly quick. Got mine pretty quickly. I think he signed they signed off on this deal, or this bill, I should say, like on a Thursday. I got mine Friday night. Stimulated. I mean, no other way to put it. Definitely be on the lookout for yours. If you haven't gotten yours yet, I know most of y'all probably know the stimmies are going out. But yes, so up next, Zack Snyder's Justice League cut was released on HBO Max. That finally has been released. I say finally, like I've been waiting on it, haven't been. But I am going to check it out because I haven't really messed with any of the DC movies. Like, when I say that I just haven't watched them. Batman vs. Superman, any of the Wonder Woman, Aquaman, like nothing DC I watched in their current little universe. I haven't done any type of digging into any of that. Up next, Rockstar recently paid someone $10,000 for fixing their load time issues for PC players. I think, like I was telling my roommate, I don't think they should have just paid him $10K. I think they should have gave him a job. Like, you got somebody that cuts down your load time or improves it by 70%. I mean, you can't just pay him off and keep him moving. Like, you need to bring him onto the team. Like, they fixed an issue for you that's been an issue for a long ass time. And somebody just random, like nobody that works for Rockstar, just fixes your shit. $10,000. I feel like that's a slap in the face. Like, you make so much money as not only as a title, but as a company within Rockstar, or as Rockstar. You only give him $10,000, nothing more, nothing less. At least, as far as what's been reported, I think that's just crazy. Like, y'all could have, if y'all were just gonna pay him money, $10,000 is just not enough, seeing how much money y'all make. And again, that fixes a big issue. Supposedly the slowdown was caused by, quote unquote, a single thread CPU bottleneck while starting up GTA Online, and this guy just fixed it. Guys at Rockstar tested this theory out. Boom, it worked. They gave him $10,000. I guess that's it. We'll see. Hopefully the more comes out of that, because again, I think they should do more than that. But a lot of you know, I recently a few weeks ago, came back from a trip to Denver. During that time, I came up with, I won't say an idea. I've done this before. Some of you know I've done this before. And you may have seen that in the past week, like, may have called on to what I'm about to speak on, but I'm taking a hiatus from social media as far as using my personal social medias. Project Recap, still going to post, like, when I drop episodes on Instagram and Twitter, and you know, anything I do as far as Project Recap or Camp Island Studios or anything where I'm making content, I'll release those accordingly onto social media. But other than that, I haven't been on social media. Well, technically I still kind of have. I've been on Snapchat, but mostly just to communicate with certain people. And also, I do like with Snapchat, you still got like the little stories that you can watch from, like, say from like World Star. I think they've got one, and like NBA teams and shit like that. I do follow stuff like that, but it's mostly because you can look at that content without seeing anybody else's opinion. That's a big reason why I'm taking a break from like Instagram and Twitter and shit like that, because I see so much on social media, and I just get tired of seeing people's opinion on shit where their opinion isn't necessary. It kind of gets annoying. So I really just wanted to just step away from it with some other reasons, but mostly that's a big part of it. Is just I'm tired of seeing people speak on, say for example, speaking on celebrities that don't know them, you know, on their personal life and what they, you know, just shit like that. Like I get tired of seeing that shit. So just taking a break from it, focusing on my craft, focusing on Project Recap in my personal life, figuring out what I want in life. That's what I plan on doing probably for the next few months. Last summer I did it for pretty much the entire summer. Like for 3 months I was away from Twitter and IG and shit like that. So I plan on going on a similar hiatus, if not longer. Yeah, and again, just focusing on mainly my main focus is Project Recap and keeping this going, not letting up. Even though I'm not gonna be on social media, I still plan on releasing an episode every week. And we're definitely going to expand more with content here soon on YouTube and things of that nature. Still going to be streaming, once, a few times out of the week. But yeah, don't expect anything different from Camp Island Project Recap or anything like that. With me being away from social media, I'm still going to be putting in work. As you see, we're here with another episode, and it's going to be a good episode. I think this is going to be arguably one of, if not my best episode so far, like out of any podcast I've done. And I hope y'all can see what I mean by the end of that, or by the end of this episode. Like, I hope y'all can see what I mean by that. But yeah, real quick, my trip to Denver though, that shit, man, if y'all have never been to Denver, especially if you smoke weed, head on out there. I won't spend too much time talking about that right now. I might tell that story like on stream or something, even though it's been about a few weeks, but still, I may hold on to that story, like my trip to Denver, for another time. I won't spend too much time on that. I do want to really get into the topics we have today. I was going to spend time talking about it today, but nah, we'll wait. So moving on to the next part of my quick recap, I do want to mention my favorite games of the week this past week. So we had the Blazers versus the Pelicans this week, where Dame dropped 50 points. Very good game. They were down, I think in the fourth quarter, they were down like 112-96. It was 7 minutes and like 20 seconds left. And from then on, it was Dame time. So, and CJ came back as well. I think that was CJ's first game back, if I'm not mistaken. Also, Jazz versus the Wizards. Russ had a 35-point triple-double to let the Wizards pass the Jazz. Bradley Beal also scored 43. Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles combined for 76 points. Utah's bench was pretty useless. They didn't have Mike Conley either during that game, so give them a little slack. But Bogdan and Jordan Clarkson both struggled, and I think that's why they lost that game. They really didn't have much contributions from their leading bench scorer and Jordan Clarkson, and then Bogdan, somebody who definitely can get his in the starting lineup, really didn't provide much offensively that game. I think he shot like 2 for 11 or some shit, or something like around there. Also, one of my favorite games of the week, Phoenix versus Minnesota. Anthony Edwards scored 42 points. Karl-Anthony Towns scored 41. They come out, of course, for 83. Anthony Edwards has been on a tear this year, averaging 26 points on 43% from the field, 32% from the three over the last 9 games. And he's averaging nearly 31 during the second half of the season. Rookie of the year, maybe? We'll see. Hopefully he can sustain that. We'll see, though. Funniest headline of the week: the Pistons turned Blake Griffin, Tobias Harris, Andre Drummond, and Reggie Jackson all into one second-round pick. Let's go ahead and get right into our main topics of the week. We're going to start it off with the New York Knicks. What's been making the Knicks click? What's made them so special? I know everybody wants to give Julius Randle a lot of credit. Of course, he's an all-star this year. Numbers have just jumped this year. Definitely their leader on that team. He's arguably, I know he brings the ball up the court a lot. They go to him a lot in ISO situations on that baseline, post up, or he's playing in a face up situation. I understand he's their guy, their go-to guy. I get that, but I do want to give a lot of credit to someone else as well, not just Julius, but RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett has been playing a lot better than his rookie year. He's currently averaging 17 points on 45% from the field, 35% from the three. 18 games this season, he's had at least 20 points or more. In the last 6 of 8, I think he scored at least 20. Well, I want to say 6 of 9 because they just played Orlando, and I don't think he had 20. I need to check. But this number here, the score at least 20 in his last 6 of 8, was prior to their most recent game. He recently just put up 32 points versus Oklahoma City. That's a career high in points. And watching his game, he's just really patient on offense, especially now that Julius is getting him more involved this year on offense, because last year RJ really didn't get as many looks or as many touches as he did or as he is this year, mostly because Julius Randle was more reluctant to get guys involved last year, including RJ. And I love seeing what RJ's game has turned into. If they can't go to Julius, they can go to RJ, and if not, they've got a really good team overall, and we're gonna get more into that here. But not only that, they haven't even had Mitchell Robinson. You know, he got hurt in mid-February around Valentine's Day. I think it was like February 13th. He had his, I can't remember if it's his right or left hand, but surgically repaired his right or left hand. I think he broke his hand at some point. But what's interesting with Nerlens Noel as their starting center, they've been 8-5 with Noel starting, while they were 12-15 when Mitchell Robinson was the starting center. I just thought that was pretty interesting to point out that this team is above 500 without him, below 500 with him. So just wanted to point it out. Not saying they're a better team without him, because I think Mitchell Robinson is their center of their future center. That's who they should go with. Nerlens Noel, you can't really give him that big of a role because of his health issues. But I again definitely think they would be an even better team if Mitchell Robinson was playing, despite that record with him. I think they'd be even better because you just have more depth at that 5 position. And what's interesting with Nerlens Noel, he is on a expiring deal this year, making only $5 million in his final year of his contract. So with him being a free agent coming this offseason, it makes it even more interesting as far as what New York is going to do to fill that backup center position if they let him walk. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. And like I do want to go back to something I forgot to mention with Julius Randle, with him being an ISO player. When I watch a lot of his games, or watching a lot of New York's games, they do run a lot of ISO for him. Like, I don't really see many plays outside of, like, they'll post him up in the short corner, right around the baseline. He'll either go for a post move or he'll face up and go one-on-one. And he's top 10 in the league in ISO usage, but only averages about 3.5 points in ISO, and I think less than a point per possession when they run ISO plays for him. So I don't know if it's sufficient to keep running him in ISO plays, because they don't really, looking at the numbers, they don't get much out of him from the ISO, like where you would want to keep running that. But hey, we'll see. Maybe he'll start scoring more in those ISO plays as the season goes on. Maybe that number will change. We'll see. But not only do I want to give Julius Randle and RJ credit, but Immanuel Quickley should start. I feel like he should be their starting 2 guard. I think they start Reggie Bullock right now, who is going to be a free agent this offseason. So maybe that'll be the opportunity to move Immanuel Quickley up to the 2. Or maybe if they do make a playoff run, maybe then they'll move him to the 2 position, because I think he should start at their 2 position. Like, bro is a scorer. Like, you give him the ball, he's either going for that floater, that run, or he can definitely shoot the ball. Like, bro is a bona fide bucket, and I think they should start him. Not saying Reggie Bullock is bad or anything, because I like Reggie Bullock as far as what he brings to the team, especially in the game that they just played against Orlando. Like, Reggie Bullock definitely played a hell of a game. But to speak more about on their recent games, they just almost beat the Nets a few nights ago. Almost came back and beat them. They could have won against Philly because they led through most of the second and third quarters. They just let it go in the fourth. And then that game against Orlando, they snapped their 2-game losing streak against Orlando, who before beating Brooklyn last night was on an 8-game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty wild. They broke their losing streak against Brooklyn. I mean, we're not going to make nothing of that, because Brooklyn is still the best team in the East. No matter who they lose to, I think they're going to come out of the East. Only challenge they may run into is going to be Philly. I don't think Milwaukee's going to do anything to shake Brooklyn. That's just my opinion, though. But in that game against Orlando, Julius led the way with an 18-point triple-double. That was his 3rd triple-double of the season. The last Knicks player to have at least 3 or more triple doubles in the season was in the 98 or the 81-82 season. I can't remember what player was it. I forgot to write that down, but he also had 17 assists in that triple double, which was the most by a Knicks power forward since 1971, which is when they started tracking assists, if I'm not mistaken. He recently became the first Knicks to record multiple triple doubles in the same season in over 3 decades. when he got his second triple-double against OKC. He already broke that record before he broke the one I just mentioned with at least 3 or more in the season. But in the game against OKC, the last player to do that was Mark Jackson back in '89. So he's been breaking a few records in the second half of the season. Got to give him a lot of props for that. Also in that Orlando game, Orlando and Knicks game, Alec Burks, Frank Ntilikina, and Reggie Bullock, like I mentioned, played really well. Overall, that was a great team game. Like, everybody got involved. Orlando did make some costly decisions down the stretch defensively, and they turned the ball over in the last possession. With that last possession, I'm trying to recall it, but I think it was on a pick and roll, and Reggie Bullock was guarding Evan Fournier. Just played great defense, caused him to turn it over, and Reggie Bullock had just turned the ball over in the previous play where he had a jump ball, I think, with Evan Fournier. So to see him come back and not, let that last play affect him, he came back, played hard, got the turnover, and sealed the game for them. Overall, this Knicks team is a really good team. I do think what they're missing, just watching them recently, is a playmaker. Like, they really do need a playmaker. They usually have RJ or Julius bringing the ball up the court. Not saying that's a bad decision. It could be better. That's my thing as far as a playmaker. And even looking at the numbers, and the numbers I have were before, I think, Friday. 29th in assists per game, 29th in assists per field goal made, 28th in assists per possession, 28th in catch and shoot, and the reason why I bring that up, obviously a big part of catch and shoot is that extra pass. If they're not getting many catch and shoot opportunities, obviously the ball is not being moved around enough. So with that being said, I do think either now, before the trade deadline, which is coming in 5 days, they either need to trade right now for a playmaker, or just wait until the offseason and maybe see if you can pick up a free agent, a playmaker in free agency. I think somebody they should go for, and this is a name that has been brought up a lot, is Lonzo. Lonzo Ball is going to be a restricted free agent this offseason, but he makes the most sense as far as their timeline. Like, they have a lot of young players. They shouldn't go for an older player. I feel like they should go for somebody younger that fits their timeline of development. They've got guys like Emmanuel Quickley. They've got guys like RJ, Julius Randle, a lot of young stars that are in the making in New York. So if you bring in a guy like Lonzo, I feel like that would be great. Maybe somebody like Terry Rozier. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2022. So I would see call Charlotte, like, hey, how much y'all, are you willing to let go of Terry, and how much will we have to give up to get Terry? And with them being an unrestricted free agent next year, you could possibly, if I'm Charlotte, you could possibly lose him for nothing next year. As far as Lonzo, New Orleans doesn't necessarily have to let him go, whether it be via a trade or in the offseason. With him being a restricted free agent, they can match any offer that any team offers and keep him for another year. And then he'll be an unrestricted free agent next year, which is going to be pretty interesting to see how Lonzo's free agency goes, to see if New Orleans matches anything. I don't think they offered any extension for him before this season. So more than likely, I think it really depends on how New Orleans season goes for the rest of the year, as far as will they offer him that additional year on his contract and then let him be an unrestricted free agent next year. We'll see. But somebody else that I thought about is not necessarily a playmaker, but could be a good pickup for them, who's going to be a free agent this year. Spencer Dinwiddie. I know he's currently hurt for Brooklyn, but he has a player option on his contract this year, so he could opt out and become an unrestricted free agent, or he could pick that option up and go for another year in Brooklyn. But somebody else who isn't being paid much, I think he's getting paid below $15,000. I want to say it's like around $11,000-$12,000 on his contract this year. So it might be able to work for New York financially, and he's a good player. So I mean, why not? I know the biggest question mark is how good would he be after that injury. I mean, hey, take a stab at it. I think he'd be worth it if you can't get a guy like Lonzo or Terry. I think it'd be worth looking into somebody like Spencer Dinwiddie. But not only do they need a playmaker, I think they also need more shooting on the bench. Somebody like JJ Redick, a veteran player like him coming in, could definitely help that team out. And they also, if they end up losing a lot of guys that they have to free agency this year, they're gonna need some wing players So somebody like Josh Hart, guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be a restricted, or I think he's unrestricted this year, I think. And guys like Kelly Oubre Jr., Kelly Oubre and Tim Hardaway kind of are question marks because of how much money they're probably going to be looking to make, and that might put New York in a tough position. Somebody else that I would even look to add maybe is Victor Oladipo. Obviously, somebody I talked about, I think, episode 5, if I'm not mistaken. He declined Houston's offer for an extension. Doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't want to sign a new contract in Houston, because Houston could offer him more money at a later date. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't want to play for Houston, even though I don't think he wants to. Look how bad they are. And he could definitely play in a better market, somebody like Miami or New York. So definitely going to be interested to see where Victor Oladipo ends up in the future. We'll keep an eye out on that. But if I'm New York, I definitely want to see, like, you know, can we add him to our team, whether it be via a trade or when he's a free agent. Like, that wouldn't be a bad pickup either. You know, I know he isn't the player that he once was prior to his injury, but he still could add a lot of scoring to your team. It's still a pretty good defender as well. So I think that'd be, if I'm New York, I'd be willing to make that call, like, you know, just to see what it would take to bring Victor Oladipo to New York. But the Knicks will have $15 million in cap space this offseason, which is the most amongst all teams in the NBA. And like I mentioned with the free agents, if they do lose out on their free agents that they have on their team, like Reggie Bullock, who I think they should re-sign, great 3-and-D player, Alec Burks, somebody I think they could re-sign, but I don't know. Taj Gibson, I don't think they should re-sign Taj Gibson. I think you could bring in somebody like Dwayne Dedmon and fill that role. Nerlens Noel, I think is somebody else they should re-sign. But if they don't re-sign Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel, a guy like Andre Drummond, I feel like if he's still available, I want to see how much it would cost to bring him in. If you lose out on your backup bigs, like I mentioned, Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel. Also losing Elfrid Payton this year, and Derrick Rose also would be a free agent, who I kind of feel like they should keep D Rose. But if they're looking to get younger, obviously we'll look to move on from him. They've also got Frank Ntilikina and Theo Pinson that will be restricted free agents this offseason. I know with Frank, it's been real up and down for him since he's come into the league as far as his role in New York. I think New York should keep him for another year. I think they should match any offers that he may get. Theo, I let him walk. Like, I wouldn't match anything for him. But I would look to match any offer that Frank gets. That's just, he has the ability to come in, knock down shots, is a really, really, really good on-ball defender. So I think they could keep him, especially if you need a backup point. Especially if you lose Derrick Rose and Elfrid Payton, I think you should look to match offers for Frank. Keep him for another year. Maybe look to trade him after you match those offers and re-sign him. Maybe if you want to, look to trade him. But if anything, have him come in as the backup point, because he really fell in rotation once they got Elfrid, Derrick Rose, and Austin Rivers, who isn't playing ever since Derrick Rose came in. I think Frank got lost in that shuffle. So once they get that squared away, whether that be now or in the offseason, I think Frank should be that backup point. But we'll see, though. It's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Knicks. They do have the most cap space going into the offseason with $15 million. They've got a lot of guys who are going to be free agents, so that'll open up the books more for them. And then seeing what's available in the offseason, or I should say free agency, as far as point guards. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting for that team, and we'll definitely keep a lookout. We're going to stay watching that here Project Recap. Let me know what y'all think as far as what you've seen from New York, what you think they should do to improve that team, whether it be making a trade before the deadline in 5 days, or waiting until the offseason to make a move in free agency, maybe picking up a guy like Lonzo, maybe bringing in a guy like Terry Rozier before he's an unrestricted free agent next year. Let me know what you guys think here, Project Recap. We're going to go ahead and get right into the next topic today. The Miami Bucks. What the fuck? The Milwaukee Bucks have been on an absolute roll, even starting before the All-Star break, but more so in the second half of the season. And the reason why I say that is because currently they're on a 5-game win streak, but the first of those 5 was the last game before the All-Star break, and they've won all 4 since the All-Star break. So just on an absolute roll right now. They beat Memphis, New York, Washington twice, and Philly in overtime, although Philly didn't have Joel. But Milwaukee was down by as much as 17 points, I think. If not 17, by 18 points to Philly, and they came back and won that game in overtime. Giannis is definitely making a case as to why he should be considered for MVP again. He's averaging 29 points on 60% from the field, 46% from the 3, which is a crazy number for a guy who, as some will say, can't shoot the 3, and nearly 80% from the free throw line. That's all during this 5-game win streak. His points that he's averaged is on par for a season average, but his shooting percentages have been up since the All-Star break. He's also averaging 12 rebounds and 9 assists. Even though his rebounds are kind of like his points on par for a season average, his assists have come up from 6 assists per game during the season. In that Philly game, he had 19 in the 4th and overtime versus Philly, finishing with 32, of course. Got to give a lot of credit to Giannis for the tear he's been on. Again, making a case for why he should be in the running for MVP, and I think he's one of my dark horses now. We'll talk more about that later during the hashtag MVP watch. Not only has Giannis been killing him, but Chris Middleton, I mean, not only during this 5-game win streak, but all season long, he's just been consistent for them on both ends of the floor. Chris Middleton, got to give a lot of credit to him. But somebody that I mentioned, I think, in episode 5, as far as the reason why the Bucks hasn't, and okay, let me rephrase that. So Jrue Holiday, I think, is a big reason as to why the Bucks have been winning the way they have been, because, of course, like I mentioned in episode 5, I think it was, they were not good without him. Like, I think, and we'll look into that too, they're currently 6-1 with Jrue since he's returned versus the Clippers. And with Jrue, the Bucks are nearly 7 points better with him on the court per 100 possessions. Also, the Bucks defensive rating is 114.3 without Jrue, 109.3 with him. And that 109.3 is currently the Bucks season average. If they were, say if their defensive rating was 114.3, that would put them at 27th in the league if that was their season average. But with him currently, as it stands, they're 8th in the NBA as far as defensive ratings. Obviously, that is a huge difference, 27 versus 8th. That there just speaks volumes to how much Jrue, not only, I know he's not a score first type of point guard. He's a defensive minded point guard, and those kind of numbers show what I mean by that. But Jrue is really important to that team. I mean, like I mentioned in episode 5, they lost 5 straight at one point without him. And now they're on a 5-game win streak, So 6-1 with him. The only game they lost was to Denver, which obviously is a really good team. And they lost badly, might I add. They lost by 31 points versus Denver. So I just want to point that out as to show that Jrue is very important to this team's future and their success in this postseason that's coming up. And it's going to be tough for other teams and their starting points to go up against Jrue. So guys like Kemba or guys like Kyrie. Guys like Kyrie is going to have a tough time going against him. Guys like Goran Dragic is going to have a tough time going against. And the list goes on as far as Eastern Conference teams. It's going to be very, very tough for them. So, but despite being in the bottom third of the league in stats like points allowed per game or field goals allowed per game, as far as the Bucks go, they have one of, if not the best defense in the league. And watching them, they get out and run guys off the 3-point line. They protect the rim over, especially that starting lineup. A lot of those guys are long in terms of reach, so they can test shots. Again, they run guys off the 3-point line. They have a great interior defense, whether that be throwing Brook Lopez at guys, or even having Giannis contest at the rim. They have a really, 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 really good defense. Second in fast break points allowed. Number 4 in opponent points. Damn, let me start that over. They're 4th in points allowed in the paint, 4th in opponents' floor percentage, and floor percentage is the ratio of scoring possessions to the total possessions. And they're only behind Miami, the Lakers, and Philly in that category. They're 6th in an opponent's second chance points, They're 7th in opponents' field goal percentage, and during this 5-game streak, they held opponents to 43% from the field, and that would be number 1 in the league if they averaged that per game. So that just goes to show how tough they've been on teams as far as on defense. And even in that game against Philly, I went and looked. In that fourth quarter comeback, they held Philly to 29% in the fourth, which is a big reason why they came back. They got out, they made it tough, they contested on every shot, ran guys off the line, and of course Philly's a team that loves to shoot that 3 ball with guys like Seth, Tobias, Kork Maz, so on and so forth. And they're also 8th in opponents' points off a turnover, so they're not allowing teams to get going anywhere. Like, they're a very, very, very tough team. I think that may be why they make it far in the postseason. I still think if Joel was healthy against Philly, that Philly would have won that game. And for that reason, a healthy Philly team, a healthy Brooklyn team is going to beat Milwaukee. Granted, Milwaukee did just add PJ Tucker. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to our trade deadline stuff, but they did beat them without PJ being on the team yet. So adding PJ to the team and losing guys like DJ Wilson, DJ Augustine, and Torrey Craig definitely is going to hurt the depth a little bit, especially for a guy like PJ Tucker, who is much older player. I still think he's going to be able to contribute as far as on defense, and he's got that corner 3 on lock. But yeah, I mean, back to what we were talking about is Milwaukee, as far as Milwaukee's defense. I think he's just going to add to that as far as the reasons why they're a good defensive team. But they're a lockup. Like, watching their games during this win streak, they just make it tough for everybody on every possession. Like, and I feel like for that reason, they definitely could make it at least to the maybe conference semis. Again, if they run into a team like Philly or Brooklyn, it's just going to be tough for them. It's going to be tough for them, but I don't expect them to just be an easy team to handle for a team like Philly or Brooklyn, because again, with this team being as one of the best defensive teams in the league, they're going to make it tougher for both of those teams. So we'll just wait and see. I just think right now the biggest thing for Milwaukee is just to integrate PJ Tucker into that system and keep the ball rolling. Like, I still feel like their bench needs a little bit more, especially now that you lost 3 players for 1. I think your depth is definitely going to be a little off now, and that might cost them. Especially if you go against a team like Brooklyn, who is loading their bench up as we speak, probably looking to add guys like LaMarcus Aldridge or Andre Drummond at some point. And then you got teams like Philly, who is a tough team, like 1 through 15. Like, they have a great first unit, a great second unit, and even a great garbage time unit. I mean, Philly is going to be a tough team for Milwaukee. Brooklyn is still going to be a tough team. I just like what Milwaukee has been doing on the defensive end during this win streak. I just wanted to point that out during this little segment here. So if y'all haven't, definitely go watch, some of their games or their highlights from the past 5 or 6 games, and you'll see what I mean. Like, bro, nobody is scoring on them. Like, absolutely no one. And the numbers, like I said, 2nd in fast break points allowed, 4th in opponents' points in the paint, 4th in opponents' floor percentage, 6th in opponents' second chance points, 7th in opponents' field goal percentage, and 8th in opponents' points off turnovers. Teams just cannot get anything going against them. Let me know what y'all think as far as what y'all have seen from Milwaukee, what you like, what you dislike, what you think about Giannis being a dark horse for MVP, for possibly his 3rd MVP. Don't think he'll win it, just with what other players are doing, but let me know what y'all think. Speaking of MVPs, we're going to go ahead and get right into the next segment. Hashtag MVP watch. Again, I do think Giannis is making a case for why he should be in the race for MVP. My list is still pretty much the same, in no particular order right now. Joel Embiid, James Harden, LeBron. I think next week, speaking of LeBron, next week we might spend some time talking about the Lakers and what they've been able to accomplish without Anthony Davis. I definitely want to spend this next week probably looking into more of their games and studying more of what LeBron is doing out there, because I don't think they've lost a game during the second half of the season. They just beat Charlotte, what was it, a night or two ago. I want to mention something with the Charlotte games. I hate this blackout shit. Like, I know they played on NBA TV the other day, and can watch them on NBA TV, whether it be through my cable or the app or whatever the case might be. But I tried to turn to the channel. It said I couldn't watch it because of restrictions, seeing that it was Charlotte. I'm like, okay, that's stupid because it's NBA TV. Like, this is broadcasted through the NBA's channel. Like, what the fuck? Try to watch it on the NBA website, same thing. I'm like, bro, like, why does this blackout shit exist, especially during the pandemic where we can't go to games like that? Unless you got good bread. I think people that are at these games live got good ass money. Like, they gotta have some big bucks. But still, even if that wasn't the case, why are they enforcing this blackout rule when we can't go to live games? Because I think the whole idea behind this blackout rule, they want you to either go to these games live or watch it through like the channel that they're broadcasting from. So like Spectrum Sportsnet, for example, I think it's for like Hornets games and Lakers games, for example. But it's stupid as fuck. Like, I wanted to watch that game. I haven't been able to watch really any Charlotte games when they broadcast it live. I've had to wait. The rule is you have to wait 3 days before you can watch a locally broadcasted team. So I have to wait 3 days before I can watch a Hornets game. And I'm not really interested in watching a 3-day-old game. You know, or at least that's not on my list of things to do. Like, oh yeah, I can't wait to watch this game in 3 days. You know, this is not like, like I just don't like it. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Don't like it. But back to MVP watch. Yeah, definitely want to spend some time watching more of the Lakers and speaking more about them probably in the next episode or two. We'll definitely keep that in mind going forward. But Nikola Jokic, I think he might be my number one obvious. I won't say obvious, but honestly, with the numbers he's put up recently, I forgot to go and look into it, but I have watched some of his games in this past week, like the game against Cleveland. They just played against Chicago last night. Almost lost to Chicago last night too, might I add. But bro has just been on a tear. Like, I think he might have had like him and Jamal combined for at least 60 or something like that. And I was hoping that Chicago would lose. Not because I don't like Chicago or anything, but it's more so for the standings. Because if with Boston just dropping another fucking game to Sacramento, I think the Bulls were 2 games behind us, and of course if they would have won, they would have possibly gotten a lot closer and eventually gotten us to that 9th seed, which I just don't want that to happen. Well, right now I think we're tied for we're in a 3-way tie for the 6th seed with New York and Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken, or was. And we can be on the outside looking in here soon. I think we will be. We don't deserve a playoff spot. I think I said that episodes ago. We don't deserve a playoff spot. I have not changed on that. We should give that to a team deserving of it, like a New York or Charlotte. We should miss the playoffs the way we playing. We don't deserve that shit. I'm not even gonna get into that. I'm not even gonna get into the Celtics because they've been pissing me off. I mean, they've been playing like they have been for quite some time now. It's just been more aggravating seeing that you're losing to teams like Sacramento at home. Cleveland, come on, bro. I'm not gonna trip. Not gonna trip. But Damian Lillard still on my list too. I think so. If I had to put this in an order, Jokic is number 1. Dame is 2 to me. LeBron probably number 3. James Harden number 4. Joel number 5. And then Giannis number 6. And the only reason why I put Giannis at 6, that's kind of my dark horse. But with the numbers he's been putting up recently during the second half of the season and during this 5-game win streak, and ever since Drew's come back, you know, he's just been playing really, 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 really good. And I think that should not go unnoticed. I think he should definitely be considered for that MVP. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe. But back to Dame though. I do think Dame is number 2 for me. He's averaging 36 points right now, 51% from the field, 42% from the 3, 95% from the free throw, 8 assists. He just had a 50-point game and a huge comeback against the Pelicans. Pelicans and them just split a series. They just had a little back-to-back game. They had, I think the Blazers won the first and Pelicans won the second one. But either way, Dame has just been killing it all season long. Like, I think the only way you can make it tough for Dame, and teams have done this, like the game against Golden State, New Orleans guarded him like this as well, but sending 2 of him as soon as he crossed half court, like playing up on him above the 3-point line, this is the only way you make it tough for him. If you let him go one-on-one, he's going to give you at least 30. And that game against Golden State is my favorite example of that, because they made it tough for him up until that last possession. They double teamed him all game long until that last possession during that game against Golden State, and then they let him go one-on-one for the game winner. We know what happens in that situation. He wins the game. So, yeah, I think Dame should definitely be up there as far as MVPs or on that list of MVP candidates. Again, let me know what y'all think. As far as who y'all think should be on that list of MVPs, who do you think is on your list as far as MVP candidates? Again, my list is, if we had to put it in an order, Jokic, Dame, LeBron, James Harden, Joel, and Giannis. So that's my list. Let me know who's on your list, 5 or 6 players, and let's talk about that, because I'm sure we'll probably have a lot of the same players just with how good these players are playing. But let me know what y'all think. Moving right along, we're going to go ahead and get into our final topic of this episode. We're going to go ahead and talk about some things with the trade deadline. Like I mentioned, the trade deadline is coming March 25th. That's 5 days from today. PJ Tucker was traded to the Bucks. The Bucks will also receive their pick from Houston. Torrey Craig was being sent to Phoenix, and DJ Augustine and DJ Wilson will be sent to Houston. Trevor Ariza was also traded to Miami from OKC. Miami will send Myers Leonard and a 2027 second round pick to Miami as well, or to OKC as well. Miami had to shed around about $9 to $10 million in contracts to take on Ariza, so get rid of a guy like Myers Leonard, who has been in the headlines for a lot of the wrong reasons. That was a no-brainer. OKC, I did want to point this out, with OKC getting that second round pick in 2027. They own 16 first round picks and 14 second round picks through the 2027 draft. You know how many teams you can make with 30 picks? You don't even have to draft all 30 of those picks. You can turn those picks into more players, bro. That shit is just nuts to think they've got 30 combined picks for the next 6 or 7 seasons. 16 in the first round, 14 in the second round, all through the 2027 draft. Just let that marinate. Let that marinate on your mind for a second. Andre Drummond could end up being bought out, and I say that because we're getting close to that deadline. Haven't made a trade yet. Doesn't mean he won't get traded. They might do it the day before. But right now, as it stands, it looks like he may get traded or bought out. And the biggest challenge for getting him traded is mostly because of his salary. Most interested teams would have to move several players to get him on board. May have to include like a third or a fourth team in those trades, which could get a little difficult. A team like Boston could use all of their traded player exception at $28.5 million, even though I don't think they should. Of course, if he gets bought out, the Lakers or the Nets are probably the favorites to sign him. But like I mentioned earlier with the Knicks, they should be interested too. I think they could definitely use a guy like Andre Drummond. I mean, I don't see, if I'm Andre coming to New York, a market like New York, not a bad idea. I know they're not a championship team right now like a Lakers or a Nets team, but you coming to the Knicks, that will put them in a tough position. Like, who is your starting 5 with a healthy Mitchell Robinson? Like, who is that guy? I don't know. I think you could go either way. That would just put them in a very tough, maybe an awkward position. Moving right along in our trade deadline news, the Celtics are interested in LaMarcus Aldridge, Nikola Vucevic, and Harrison Barnes. They got a good look at Harrison Barnes last night, but they may need to move Tristan Thompson in order to bring on somebody like a Nikola or LaMarcus, which I don't think they should do, especially for somebody like LaMarcus, and I'll talk about that here shortly. But the only things I've seen that could be linked to a trade for Tristan Thompson is either Toronto, which is his, of course, his hometown, or sending him back to Cleveland. I can't remember what the trade was. I think it may have been something new with Andre Drummond, but I don't think that's likely. Wow, I just cannot talk for some reason. But if I'm Boston, I wouldn't be willing to trade for Aldridge. I would want to buy him out, because I'm not moving a guy like Tristan Thompson, who leads my team in rebounding, for a guy who's averaging maybe like 4 or 5. I think he's averaging like 4.5 rebounds, which is a career low this season, even though he's played like a little bit over 20 games. Small sample size compared to that of Tristan Thompson, but you go from Tristan Thompson, who averages, I think, like around 9 rebounds or so, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I wrote that down. Yeah, roughly around 8 boards, I think. I wouldn't want to make that move. Not only that, I understand he's a great option for a pick and pop. I don't think, if we were to pick him up, that we should just pick him up for pick and pops. Like, that slows the offense down, trying to set up that pick and pop. And it's easy to defend with a guy like Aldridge, who doesn't have the greatest footwork. He isn't quick, so that might be easier to defend for a team like Brooklyn or Philly. So not only that, he's a defensive liability, getting bad footwork. He can't really guard the perimeter players. He struggles containing pick and rolls. He does, well, as far as like San Antonio, they use him in drop coverages for pick and roll defenses. And from a lot of what I saw, like as far as some clips that I saw with him guarding the pick and roll, teams will eat that up. Like he's a decent. He's been a good shot blocker throughout his career, but not so much this year. Especially when it comes to protecting the paint from pick and rolls. He doesn't really do a great job of containing that. The Spurs are actually 9 points worse with him on the floor. And again, like I mentioned, during the season with the Spurs, averaged around 4.5 rebounds, which is a career low for him. That could negatively affect the Celtics, who are number 10 in rebounds per game amongst all teams. And like I mentioned, Tristan Thompson averages nearly 8. Robert Williams and Daniel Tice also average around like 5 or 6 or so. And 5 players in total on the Celtics, not including our 3 centers, average more rebounds than LaMarcus Aldridge. So I definitely think moving a guy like Tristan Thompson, again, who leads our team in rebounding, for a guy who averages a career low in rebounds at 4.5, it obviously does not work. It does not make sense. He isn't getting any younger. He's 35 right now. He'll be 36 at the start of next season. It wouldn't make sense to make a move for LaMarcus if Boston still has Daniel Tice, Tristan Thompson, and Robert Williams. So for that reason, I don't think if specifically if the Celtics don't move one of those 3, which I don't think they should move any of them, if it's not an improvement as far as rebounding or paint defense, or even a big that can also score as far as shooting the ball while also being able to defend, something that I don't think LaMarcus can do efficiently. I just don't think he can do it. For that reason, I think teams like the Blazers, the Suns, the Heat definitely could use him. I feel like if he gets bought out, I think he might end up going back to Portland, to be honest. I think that might be the best thing for him. I think he should have stayed there. I think he should have never left, to be honest, but maybe we'll see what happens. And I don't think the Spurs are going to trade him. It's rare that the Spurs have made big trades during the season. The last trade they made during the season was in 2013-2014, where they traded for Austin Daye. Since the 1990 season, the Spurs have made a total of 5 trades during the season. And the only time they've reached buyouts were for guys like DeMarre Carroll and guys like Pau Gasol. So I think he could fit into that category of veteran players who want to move on. They'll probably end up buying him out, paying him to go away, and I think that makes the most sense. I don't know how much you can get back in a trade for a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge. Again, guy who's getting older, 35 right now, 36 at the start of next season, career low in numbers. I don't know how much you can get for him. I don't know what his value is in the league. We'll see though. We'll see. In the Celtics, I've also read may be interested in John Collins. And speaking of John Collins, teams like the Celtics and the Hornets are interested in John Collins. Miami, I think, even in Dallas as well. But the Hornets, or not the Hornets, but the Hawks want a first-round lottery pick or a all-star level player. Not to mention, John Collins did turn down an extension before the 2020 and 2021 season. If I'm not mistaken, John Collins is looking to sign an offer sheet worth 4 years, $100 million in the offseason, and I don't know if Atlanta is looking to pay him. My question is, will Atlanta match offers for John Collins this offseason, as he is a restricted free agent? With how Capella's being used for him, I think obviously moving on from John Collins makes sense, because they've been taking a lot of touches away from John Collins with Clint Capella being on the team, being used in that pick and roll. And with the emergence of Kevin Huerter, I feel like Kevin Huerter may be the number 2 option on the Hawks, not John Collins. And if Cam Reddish can really blossom into a superstar level player or an all-star level player, he could be their 3rd option, hell, the number 2 option. So that really it causes a lot of issues with where John Collins falls into that shuffle. So I don't know what John Collins may do in the offseason. Like, will he look to stay with Atlanta or will he look to move on? But Atlanta doesn't necessarily have to trade him, since he's a restricted free agent. And right now they're on I think a 7 or 8 game win streak. So you're hot right now. He's a restricted free agent. You don't have to trade him. You can match any offer in the offseason. And say if you do want to trade him, just match the offer that he ends up receiving and trade him for, let me rephrase that. So say if they do match an offer for him and it's on a lesser deal than what he's on now, they can match that offer and trade him on a smaller contract, which will play out as a win-win for Atlanta. Like you save money and you also can end up getting something back for him. So I think that would be smart for Atlanta, is to hold on to him. You don't have to trade him unless somebody blows you away with a huge offer at the trade deadline. Then maybe, yeah, do it. But as it stands, again, they don't have to, with him being a restricted free agent. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me to make that trade. But moving on to our next free agent, or not necessarily free agent, but another player that I've heard a lot of in terms of this free agency deadline, or damn, I keep saying free agency. I don't know what's going on with me today. I apologize. Another player that I've heard come up in the trade deadline is Kyle Lowry. Somebody I don't think is getting traded, because I think Toronto is definitely making a push for the playoffs. I think currently they're outside of the top 8 teams in the NBA. So maybe if they go on based on what they've seen from their team, they're currently 11th in the East. If they go off of what they've seen right now, I feel like maybe they should trade him. They should do right by him and send him to a playoff team. But the only team they should trade him to is maybe a team like Philly or the Clippers. Philly, I say that because they could definitely use a veteran player like Kyle, hometown guy like Kyle, somebody who's done it, somebody who's been through deep playoff runs, who's won a championship. That would just make not only Philly a tough team offensively, but defensively as well. But not only with that, I think if Philly or if Toronto if they were not to move him via a trade, that would put them in a tight situation financially if they were to commit to him through the 2021-2022 season. So I think moving on for him would make sense financially, and if you want to do right by somebody who I think is one of the greatest Raptors, top 3 greatest Raptors of all time, you should do right by him in sending him to a team like Philly or the Clippers. And I think the Clippers would be the greatest beneficiary, because Patrick Beverley is ass. He is buns. Patrick Beverley does nothing but talk. He fouls the shit out of people and he talks a lot. So if you get a guy like Kyle Lowry, who some may know I'm not a big fan of, as far as like he just flops a lot and just does a lot of bullshit on the court, I think the Clippers would be a hell of a lot better if they brought in Kyle Lowry. You reunite him with Kawhi and Serge. It just would make so much sense for the Clippers to pick up a guy like Kyle Lowry if they can get him via a trade. I don't know what they would be willing to give up for a guy like Kyle. I don't know what the asking price is for Kyle, but it would be very interesting to see what the Clippers would be willing to give up to bring in a guy like Kyle. I bet like Kyle on that team, I think that will push them even further. Like honestly, that I don't want to say that would make them a favorite in the West, but it would make it a lot tougher for the Lakers. It'll make it a lot tougher for the Jazz. It'll make it a lot tougher for, even though they're not that high in the seedings, the Nuggets will also have a tough time against a Clippers team that has Kyle Lowry, say if they trade for him. So I think, and mostly I don't want Philadelphia to get better, so that's another reason why. But I think the Clippers would definitely benefit greatly from picking up a guy like Kyle. I think that would be the best destination for him as far as a team that could use a point guard like Kyle, because again, Patrick Beverley is not it. I just do not like Patrick Beverley as your starting point guard if you're looking to be a championship team. I think picking up Kyle would be the best thing to do. Let me know what y'all think as far as Kyle Lowry. Should he stay in Toronto and should they thug it out and see if they can make a push for the playoffs, currently 11th in the East, or should they trade him to the number one Philly team or the number 4 Clippers? I think the Clippers would be crazy to not call Toronto and see how much he's worth or what the asking price is for him and make a move. I think they should make that move depending on what they're asking for. I don't know what I haven't read as far as like what Toronto is asking for teams. I don't think they've taken any calls and made that a known thing as far as like what they're looking for in terms of what they'd be willing to give up or what they want back to give up, Kyle. But we'll definitely keep a lookout on that. We'll definitely report that here on Project Recap. Let me know what y'all think about today's topics, what y'all think about free agency, what's going on with the Knicks. The Bucks are on a roll. MVP watch, anything with quick recap, definitely let me know. Recap Project on Twitter, Project Recap on IG. Look me up on YouTube. Come to my website, CampIslandStudios.com. Come check out the content or check me out on Twitch. We'll be streaming. I think Monday we'll come back to the stream, do some GTA RP. I think also some Red Dead Redemption. Just got that for PC illegally. Yeah, come check us out. We'll definitely be there. We'll talk about some things if y'all want to talk about the topics there on Twitch Monday. Don't have a time just yet. Probably around like 7, 8, 9 o'clock, somewhere later in the night. But as always, it's your boy. Check us out next week. I don't know what day we're dropping next week. I know the schedule is usually now it's supposed to be every Tuesday. It is Saturday and I'm dropping, so I don't know what day we're coming out with an episode next week, but we'll have an episode next week. The plan is, of course, no matter what day it is, we're dropping an episode every single week. We're on a roll right now. 6 straight episodes, keeping that ball rolling. Episode 10 is around the corner. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Definitely starting to plan something out for that, something special, something different for episode 10. But definitely check us out next week, episode 8. Don't know when that's coming. And don't even ask because I don't know right now. I have no idea. We'll see. We'll see. But as always, it's your boy TY, and I'm signing out. Peace.
What you gonna do, brother?